Um, there you would get these phone calls, right, that somebody was trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty, and it was a scam. It was pervasive. We seem to get. I know I got at least two or three of those calls a week, sometimes more. And they had no idea who I was, what car I had, or whether it had a warranty or didn't. That was just their attempt to get us here. And this little cartoon is kind of funny to remind us, even on a deserted island, they're trying to let this guy know that his car's extended warranty needs work. So the Federal Trade Commission received 2.2 million fraud reports in 2020 alone. And that was with imposter scams being the most. And the interesting thing about this stat is that's reported. There's a lot of scams and attempts at scams that aren't reported. So this number is definitely lower than what is real. And just think about how many scams are really out there and don't even get reported. So that's a lot. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you're going to be able to recognize some of the characteristics of a scam and then describe some ways that you can protect yourself from falling victim to those scams. So let's kick it off first with what are some of the characteristics of a scam? Well, first off, when we're looking for hallmarks of a scam, they typically are people trying to put you in an emotional situation. They want you to be making your emotional brain work hard and your logic brain not. So they want to put you with a sense of urgency, excitement, or fear. So anytime that you're in a position where somebody's trying to get you to do something, sell something, make you give them some information, and you're feeling, anxiety, you're feeling a lot of emotion, especially anything like urgency, excitement, or fear, that's something that you want to really pay attention to, because our brains are designed to detect threats and rewards. And when they detect a threat or a reward, you may have heard this in one of our previous presentations, Money in the Brain. We kind of have this lizard brain or caveman brain that goes into action. That is the part of our brain that is responsible for really quick hit moves, basically, right? The things that keep us alive, our fight or flight. It's fast, it's involuntary, and what it does is it creates very quick associations between things that we've seen before and responses that we've had that kept us alive. And so that part of our brain is really quick thinking, but it's not necessarily the part of our brain that does the best thinking in all situations, because we have this other part of our brain that's the rational brain. And the rational brain, the cerebral cortex part of our brain, is the part that does our good long-term thinking, does the pros and cons of different scenarios, really works to kind of decipher what's going on and make sense of it in a bigger picture rather than just a fight or flight. Is this going to be a good thing or bad thing for me? So what we want to really do is slow down as much as we can when we feel ourselves in this emotional decision-making mode, so that we can ensure that we're starting to think with the logical part of our brain and starting to piece together what's going on. So anytime you have that urgency, that excitement, that fear, and you feel like you want to have a quick response, or you feel like you need to make a quick response, that's going to be a red flag. Okay. Don't act without verifying what you're hearing in these situations. In these situations, you might get somebody saying, if you don't do this, you're going to be under arrest, or the IRS is going to come after you, or something bad is going to happen. Or they might say, if you don't do this, you're going to miss out, right? Hey, we owe you money, but you have to tell us right now what your bank account is so that we can send it to you. And if you don't, then you're going to miss out on, $15,000 or something like that. Anytime they're trying to make it seem like an urgent, fearful, or exciting situation, red flag. One way that scammers do this is by creating unexpected contact. So unexpected contact can come in the form of phone calls. It can be messages. It can be emails. I know for me personally, what I've seen a lot lately are texts coming from phone numbers that I don't recognize that say something like, hello, I've been trying to reach you, or just hi there, something unexpected. It's not somebody I know, and they're just trying to, make conversation. Now, you could either see that and say, who is this? And they might come up with a story and they might create a whole thing. That's the hook that they're trying to pull you in with, is that unexpected contact. Um, if you just ignore it, they will never contact you again, usually, right? Or they'll contact you from a different phone number. They're trying to create a scenario where you're curious about what's going on or who this person is. And that's actually one of the things that allows them to get their hooks in to further the scam and try to further the scam. So if you get those phone calls, again, you might get false claims about, you need to send them some information, or they need to verify some information with you so that they can send you money, or that you owe money and you need to act right now. You get those phone calls, you do not pay attention to them. Or at the very least, what you can do is say, great, give me your information, your company, an employee ID, tell me more details. I'm going to go ahead and follow up, and I will get back to you about that, right? And then what you could do is go and try to verify what you're hearing by either calling the company directly that they say they're from, seeing if it's a reputable company, doing some research out there to see if it's a well-known scam, or you could actually call a law enforcement agency and say, I'm getting this sort of contact. Can you tell me if you know anything about it? So you want to make sure that you're doing some of your own legwork rather than just assuming that what you're hearing is true. Same thing with messages and emails. Emails are they're getting harder and harder to pick the good ones that are scams, but do a really good job of hiding it. So one thing that you want to do when you get an email that looks like it could be legitimate, hover over the email address. Sometimes the email address will just say a name, or it'll maybe even say a name and where it's from. But when you look, it will actually be coming from a different place. A lot of times what happens is scammers will they'll take advantage of somebody else's email. So they've hacked into somebody else's email, which happens all the time, and then they use that person's legitimate email to send their scam offers out or their scam mails out. So it looks like it's coming from a legitimate place, but in fact, it's just the scammers who have taken control of that person's email. So you want to be careful with those situations. A lot of times what they'll also do is purport to come from something like Amazon or UPS. They'll have a box or a link that says, click here to update your information, or click here to see the new tracking number for your package, or click here to see your invoice, all these sorts of things, right? And when you click on those, it will take you somewhere that the scammer wants you to go. It might install malicious software. It might just take you to somewhere that's meant to steal your credentials, something like that. Maybe it takes you to something that looks very much like an Amazon login page, but in fact, it's not an Amazon login page. They're just trying to get your Amazon credentials so that they can log into your account and buy things off of your account. So instead of following those links, what you can do is type the web addresses in directly for the websites that you know to be legitimate. So if you get something from, purporting to be from Amazon customer service saying that your account is being shut down for fraudulent activity or something like that, click here to resolve this. Don't click there. Go to Amazon.com in your browser directly and see if there's anything that comes up. Guaranteed there will be some sort of pop-up notification or some sort of communication in your account settings that's going to tell you something like that is happening. It's not going to come in the form of an email that they want you to click. Okay, so if you look for those things, you'll probably see most of the counterfeit things out there. Unfortunately, you don't have to have a real complex scam these days. All you need are a few people who aren't paying attention to follow the link for it to be successful. So they can send out tens of thousands of, fairly bad scam emails. And if 3 or 4 people follow that, it's totally worth it for the scammers. And so in some cases, they're really not um, they're not really trying to make it look great, which is good news for you if you're somebody who's paying attention, because you can usually relatively easily spot what the problems are just looking at it. Um, here's an example that we had come up. So this is an email that somebody sent, and they're trying to get our member to request that funds are released. And if you look at the way that this email is written, you can very clearly see that it's, somebody who's not the most professional writer. It isn't written in a way that you would expect to see from a legitimate company. It's definitely got a lot of red flags. Sometimes what you can look for in terms of red flags in the writing, if there's a lack of punctuation or there's a whole lot of extra punctuation, that's usually one good thing. So you can see at the end of this one, there's 3 exclamation points. There's weird capitalization. There's some odd ways of saying things. Those are all signs that you might be dealing with a scam. Now, granted, there are certainly people who aren't great at writing, or maybe are, English is a second language for them and they may not have the most fluent speech. But again, you take everything in context and you can say, okay, here's somebody who maybe is a poor writer, but on top of that, they're trying to create a situation where they're trying to talk somebody into doing something, or they're trying to make something happen very quickly. And when those things happen, you can put those together enough pieces of those things together to say, this is probably something that I should be very careful with. So here's a better example of a pretty good scam. So this Amazon satisfaction survey says, you've been selected to get an exclusive reward up to $100, and it, looks like it could be legitimate because that's a pretty snazzy looking graphic, right? But it's very easy for scammers to copy and paste graphics from a legitimate source. If you look up at the top of this email, you'll see it comes from Amazon Customer Appreciation, but the email address is newsletter@rerulenow.com. Now, probably Amazon is not using that address as their customer appreciation website, address that they're sending things out from. There are cases where companies will send out things from a third party satisfaction survey, somebody that actually is a business that's all they do is customer satisfaction surveys. And so you might see that on occasion. That's not necessarily something you'll never see, where those are not combined, as far as like they might not come from the company specifically, but you want to look for some other details, right? And in this case, you can see in the subject, it says, Jane Smith, uppercase, we've been trying to reach you, please respond. In this case, this is another example of they're using just the email in this, the to, as the person's name. So they don't really have the customer's information. They're just kind of interpreting what that person's, from that person's email, what their name might be. And they're trying to make an urgent thing out of it. And then they want you to click. So all of those things together should help you realize that this is probably not something legitimate, or it's definitely something that you want to be extremely careful with. Sometimes you'll get unusual requests. Usually what you're going to find are when you get these unexpected phone calls, unexpected emails, they're asking you to do something or give something out of the ordinary. That might be to provide information that they should have already. So if somebody calls and says, I need to verify it's you, give me your social security number, or give me your account number or something like that, don't do that, right? If somebody calls you and asks for that information, that should be a red flag. Anybody who asks you to accept money or accept packages, that's going to be an issue. Anybody who's asking you to send money to them, that's something you want to worry about. And then you also want to worry about confidentiality. So let's look at these a little bit more. Provide information. So when they ask you to provide information, a lot of times they're asking for things like social security number, account usernames or passwords, account numbers. They might ask for some personal identifiable information, maybe the kinds of things that tend to be security questions that you might have in a different account. So sometimes you'll say, what's your mother's maiden name? Or, what was your pet's name or something like that? A security question answer that they might want to get from you because maybe they have access to one of your accounts, but they can't get in because they don't have all of the security question answers. So you don't want to provide that kind of stuff over the phone or email to just anybody. You also don't want to give away things like your bank account numbers or credit card numbers for anybody who makes those calls as well. This is one that's come up quite a bit. I don't know if it's still as big as it was, but it definitely is a big one. So you would get people who say, hey, I'm going to send you this package that I need you to go ahead and send on to my friend. And if you do that, I'll pay you, some money. And people would do that having no idea, A, what the package is, and B, what was going on with why they were being paid money. And so, you could get yourself wrapped up in a really a big time problem there, depending on what's in those boxes and that sort of thing. But somebody's trying to launder a transaction and they're trying to use you to do it. And so you don't want to do that. If you've ever been asked to forward money, so sometimes you'll get, I'm going to send you $2,000 in a check. Please cash the check, keep $500 for yourself, and send $1,500 in gift cards on to somebody else. That's a scam, right? That's somebody saying what they're going to do is they're going to have you buy $1,500 in gift cards. The check that they've sent you is going to bounce, and you're going to be held liable for the whole thing. And you've now lost $1,500 that you've sent in untraceable funds to somebody else. So you want to watch out for those money laundering, reshipment scams. Sometimes they call them man in the middle scams, where you're the person sort of in the middle of this who gets caught holding everything in the end. Anytime they claim that you owe money or that you need to put money down on the spot to hold something or to be eligible for something, they're trying to make you feel a sense of loss or feel that you might be missing out on something. So you want to be careful with that. And also another one that can seem weird is returning an overpaid amount. So they might say, you paid our company too much money. We want to return some. Please send us your bank account information. Something like that. Those are, again, scams that you want to watch out for. Anytime they ask you to pay with a difficult to track or difficult to recover form of payment, that's something you want to worry about. So again, gift cards is a big one. I've heard several scams where somebody gets a phone call, and typically it'll be, you're going to be under arrest if you don't pay this bill. I'm a collector, and don't hang up the phone right now. Drive to Target or Walmart or whatever the closest big box store is. Go to the gift card aisle, and you're going to buy $750 worth of gift cards. And don't hang up the phone. Stay on the line with me the whole time. Buy them, and I'm going to tell you what address to send them to. Well, once you've sent those gift cards, or actually they'll even ask, they won't send an address. They'll ask you for the numbers and the pins for those gift cards so they can then immediately go and use the money. Once they've done that, it's gone. Gift cards are really, really difficult to trace. And so once that's done, your money's gone. They've got it. You kind of put it into a form where you can't get it back. Whereas if you, if you made a transaction with a kind of regular account, there's a chance that you might be able to get that back. Wire transfers, that's another one. There's especially a lot of fraud around wire transfers when you're buying a home. So you'll hear that a lot when you're going to close on a home. They'll say, "Here are the wire instructions. Don't listen. If you ever get an email, even if it looks like it's from our company, do not change these wire instructions unless you talk to us in person or you know exactly who we are. We're talking to you because a lot of times you'll get the emails will come that will say, "Oh, we need you to change the wire transfer account information." You'll make that wire transfer, and it's really hard for them to recover wire transfers because they typically go to overseas bank accounts and to places that are harder for U.S. Banks to get the money back from. I've had a friend who had that happen when she was buying a house. I believe it was a $40,000 wire transfer that she got an email day of saying, "Oh, hey, we need to update these numbers. Please send it here instead." And she actually wasn't paying attention, and it took a long time for that to get unraveled. She was really lucky that they were able to recover the money because it hadn't fully transferred over in the banking system yet. So she caught it fast enough to be able to do something, but it still took a long time to get it back and to go through that. And think about buying a house; it's stressful enough. Never mind losing your whole, deposit to a scam. And then money orders, that's a common one, especially with um, international scams. So you'll get a lot of places where they say, go to the store and send me a money order, and you send it overseas. That's a very common scam. So anytime you're being asked to deal with gift cards, wire transfers, or money orders, those should be red flags that you're not necessarily dealing with somebody who might be on the up and up. And then if somebody asks you to keep the transaction or the relationship a secret, that should be another issue. So a legitimate business isn't going to say, "Hey, you shouldn't tell anybody about this, right? Keep this between us." Um, when you have that happen, there's a couple of things that are going on. One, the person who's trying to scam you is trying to create a special relationship, right? They're trying to make you feel like either A, you're a trusted person and they're a trusted person and they don't want to get anybody else involved, or B, they're trying to, prevent you from suffering some kind of embarrassment or something like that. They want to say, "Oh, let's just keep this between us. We don't need to get anybody else involved in this," that sort of thing. They're trying to make you feel fearful in that scenario. Or they might also have this situation where, once you go and start talking to somebody else who's outside of the experience, they start to see some of the holes and some of the red flags that light up. And they're able to say, "Hey, did you think about this? Or have you looked this up? Or this doesn't sound right." So if you're talking to somebody who hasn't been in contact with a scammer and kind of gotten this far along with them, there's a good chance that that person is going to bring to your attention that there are some problems here. And so anytime you're being asked to keep things confidential, to not tell anybody, to not worry about it, that should be a red flag that you need to look out for. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can protect yourself in these situations. The first thing you want to do is to wait. So you want to put some time and some distance between the initial contact and your response to it. So legitimate companies may contact you. There may be some scenarios where, yeah, you might owe some money, or there might be an issue that you need to take care of. They're not going to make you do it on the spot. They're not going to force you to act rashly or real quick. You want to be able to verify before you trust. And so, what we're doing here is, remember at the beginning when we talked about the emotional part of our brain versus the logical part of our brain, we're trying to engage more of the logical part. And when we put distance between ourselves, when we give ourselves time, that's what allows the logical part of our brain to kick in and start to kind of let the wheels turn and think through all of these things. So you want to do what you can. If you're not sure whether it's a scam, you think it could be real, you want to do what you can to get some verification. So first off, you can request an official letter. So if somebody says you owe a debt, you could say, okay, I understand that. Please send me an official letter with the information so that I can look over it, make sure that it's legitimate. And then you'll see what kind of response you get, right? Does it come from a professional looking company? Is it, does the company itself check out when you do some verification? Do they have the kind of information you would expect to see? That sort of thing. And then make sure you talk to somebody that you trust. So when you can talk to somebody you trust who maybe knows more about this, that's going to help you decide whether you're dealing with something that is legitimate. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Scammers are, again, trying to appear to be legitimate. So they may spoof phone numbers. I've had people call me and say, hey, I just got a phone call from this number. What's going on? I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't call you. Obviously, somebody spoofed my number. Unfortunately, technology really makes it easy for this sort of thing to happen now, where they can clone your phone number or the phone number of a legitimate company in order to make these phone calls, right? And oftentimes they will switch, so they're not going to use the same number all the time. They're going to kind of churn and burn. They're going to keep going through a bunch of different numbers. Sometimes it might be your number. Sometimes it might be somebody else's number. Sometimes it could be a legitimate company's number. So they are trying to do what they can to appear to be legitimate. Same thing with links, websites, all that kind of stuff. So take the time to research the claim. It's easy to look up the caller's name, their organization. You can look for web addresses, locations, phone numbers, complaints, reviews. Excuse me. One of the things that I found really helpful, especially if you get like a voicemail and it sounds like maybe the voicemail is pre-recorded, what I've done is put quote marks around certain phrases that get used in that contact and go and search for that. So you're looking for the entire exact phrase. And a lot of times you'll find the exact same phrasing used when they're reporting scams on other websites. So there might be a scam report that's using the exact same language that you just got. And that will help you to realize, okay, this is probably not a legitimate contact. So when you request an official letter, you're going to be able to kind of figure out, all right, what kind of information does this place have on me that that shows that maybe they're legitimate. And then they're taking the time to send this, right? Most of the time, a scammer isn't going to take the time on an initial attempt to scam somebody to really put in a lot of effort to make a letter look real, to send a stamp, to do that sort of things, right? Those are more time consuming and for the scammer, not really worth it. And so if you don't get that letter, then it was probably a scam. But if you do get the letter, then you have a chance to look at it and say, okay, this looks like it could be legitimate. There's some, contact information. There's some legitimate things here that tell me that I should probably act on this with a little bit more, authority, now knowing that I've kind of verified that this could be legitimate. When you talk to somebody you trust, that can be a lot of different people. So that doesn't have to be law enforcement. It certainly could. It could just be a friend that you think, knows something about this. You could go into any financial institution. If you're talking about a financial scam, you could walk into any financial institution and say, hey, I got this call, this email, something, and I'm not sure that it's legitimate. Can you tell me if you've heard anything like this before, right? And somebody there will probably be able to help you understand if this is a common scam, or help you figure out what are the things that you can do to protect yourself to make sure that you're not going to fall victim if it is a scam. And then just talking to somebody allows you to get their insights, their perception. They might have questions that you hadn't thought of, or just kind of walking through the situation yourself. You might start to see things that appear different when you're explaining them versus when you're just talking with the scammer. So just having that conversation is going to be helpful. You can always certainly call the Attorney General's office in the state. They often deal with scams, so they might be able to tell you whether they've heard of something, or they might be able to give you some information about the company that is purporting to contact you to let you know if that is a legitimate company, if they've heard anything about that. So there's definitely a lot of ways that you can double check some of the information before you kind of move on assuming that it's true. Another thing that you want to do to protect yourself is to put up some monitoring things. So statements, alerts, notifications, these are things that you're going to want to do. I have just in the past, let's see, it's February. So right before Christmas, I got a Credit Karma alert that said there was an inquiry on my credit report. And I was expecting there to be an inquiry on my credit report because I had just applied for a new credit card a week before, and I had seen that inquiry show up on some of my other credit reports and some of my monitoring things. But I decided I just wanted to be sure that that's what it was. And I went and signed in and looked, and I'll be darned. It was an inquiry from Chase Bank. Well, I didn't apply for a credit card with Chase Bank. I applied for a credit card with Capital One. And my Capital One inquiry was there. I don't know what the Chase Bank one was. So I immediately contacted Chase and said, "Hey, there's an alert on my Experian account that somebody's trying to open an account. Can you look into that?" And sure enough, they did have an application in my name using my social security number in process that they were looking at. And so because I had that alert notification set up, I was able to quickly make a phone call, shut it down, and prevent it before somebody got that credit card, possibly ran it up under my name, and then I had to go and deal with that kind of fraud. So it's really worth your while to set up some monitoring alerts, some things like that, and just follow them. You'll get some emails. You'll say, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting another alert email," but you really want those. You want to make sure that those are things you pay attention to because they could save you a lot of headache down the road. You want to look at where what's on your credit report. So annualcreditreport.com is the free website where you can go and get your credit reports from the three bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, to find out what those credit bureaus have on you as far as accounts opened, addresses that you're known to have lived, phone numbers that you've used, any of your legal names, all of those sorts of things. I recommend that you do that at least once a year. Go and check those. If you really want to be on top of things, one of the cool things you can do is say, okay, every 4 months, I'm going to check a different credit bureau report. Most of the time, you get one free one per year where you can look at the full report. Although that's changing now and they're offering it more frequently, especially because there's been so many instances of fraud that they want people to be more proactive and paying attention to that stuff. But if you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can go and sign in to get those free reports. You want to look for, what accounts are on there. Make sure that you recognize both the open and closed accounts, and make sure that there's nothing that looks off as far as addresses that they have for you, previously have lived. If you don't recognize an address, that could be an instance where somebody had opened something up and under your name, but sent it to their address. So you want to watch out for that. And then just having good antivirus software is helpful. A lot of times when you click on these links that take you somewhere from the scams, what they're trying to do is install something on your computer that then allows them to better track or better steal your information. So it could be something like a keylogger that's taking a log of all of the keystrokes that you're putting into that, and they're looking for usernames and passwords. It could be some malware, it could be any number of things, but an antivirus software will kind of help keep you protected if you miss some of the signs and do click on those links and they try to install something bad. You want to review your transactions at least weekly. So that doesn't have to be super difficult. That doesn't have to be an intense thing. I personally like to use Mint. Mint.com is a free service where you can kind of pull together all of your different accounts. So your credit cards, your bank accounts, all those different things into one place. It'll flow in all of the transactions and you can just kind of spot check, go through them. Is there anything that you don't recognize, right? Is there anything that looks off? If you see that, you can click on it really quick and say, okay, where did this come from? A lot of times it'll be something like, you bought something with somebody who's used a Square, a small vendor or something like that, and the name might not make sense, but you can kind of piece together, okay, yeah, I was, out at farmer's market and I bought something for about that amount of money, and on that date, that's probably what it is. But if you wait too long, your memory might not serve as well. So really be good if you can review your transactions at least weekly to make sure that you're staying on top of those things. Again, so if you're looking at your credit report, you get that free copy of the credit report. If you see anything that's weird, you want to report that to the credit bureau. So anytime you see an inaccuracy, you want to flag that, ask them to look into it. They can look into it. Now, what the credit bureaus aren't going to do is if you have something bad that's legitimate, they're not going to get rid of that in the long term, right? Because that's just factual stuff. But if you have something on there that really is fraudulent, they will remove that. And so if you notice that maybe you've got a credit score alert, you might see that credit score has changed significantly, gone down a lot or something like that. That could be a red flag to you that maybe there's something going on that you need to take a look at. And then you can also place an alert or a freeze on your credit report, a fraud alert or a freeze, just to make sure that you're not falling victim to anything there. And I did go and put a freeze on mine as soon as I saw the other one. It would have been unfrozen while they were checking for my new credit card anyway, but that's that's a situation where you could save yourself some heartache by having a freeze on your credit. And again, yeah, antivirus software. The software that comes with computers usually isn't bad. But sometimes if you just want to get something extra, like a Bitdefender or something like that, you can. But a lot of times the Windows Defender is not too bad. Make sure that you keep those things up to date. Sometimes it may feel like a pain to always click the update button, but that's what keeps you protected from new stuff coming out. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. And then you want to go ahead and report any issues that you come up with. So service providers, financial institutions, government agencies. So if you want to go ahead and add to those 2.2 million reported frauds from 2020, you go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. And then talk to your friends and family. Let them know if you've been scammed with something or you've seen something, because that'll help them to look out for issues. I had a friend, we both went to the same tax preparer, and he lost $5,000 in a bank scam where the tax preparer's information was hacked. They got his account number and they pulled $5,000 out, and took him a little while to get it back, but he did. But he told me about it. He said, "Hey, this happened to me." And so I was on high alert for any suspicious transactions that might have been happening on our account. And sure enough, about 6 months later, somebody had, when you open a new account and they send a couple of transactions to your bank account to see if you really own the account, you're supposed to tell them how much went in there. Well, somebody had done that with a different financial institution. And we immediately saw that there were these two small transactions and knew that this was what had happened to our friends. So we were able to make a phone call and get that shut down real quick. So just having the knowledge that my friend had that happen was what allowed me to see that. So feel free to share any of these things that happen to you with your friends, your family, so that they can look out too. Your service providers, they can help you if somebody's taken control of your accounts, or they can also help you monitor for things if they know that there's fraud on your account. They can help look out for that for you. And of course, your financial institutions, you want to report those things right away, depending on what kind of loss you have, whether it's debit, credit, or a checking account, something like that. There's different rules around when you have to report those things in order to be held not liable. So credit cards, those are usually pretty easy. Typically, you're not responsible for any fraud on credit cards. When it comes to things like debit cards, checking, savings accounts, the rules are a little bit different. You have to report them within so many days in order to be completely reimbursed. If you don't report them within a certain time frame, then you might be on the hook for a little bit of that or all of that fraud if you don't report it early enough. So you want to make sure to do that, because then they're also going to do things like maybe close that account and open a new one for you, give you a different account number so that you're not going to have future issues. Or of course, they can reverse the transactions and reimburse you for those things. Government agencies, Federal Trade Commission is sort of the big dog in fraud. State Consumer Protection Office, the Attorney General's office, those kinds of things. And then, of course, your local police can also be a resource because, again, they've probably heard some of these things. And then you can also, social media can be used for some good things sometimes, believe it or not. So if you have this sort of thing happen and you want to share, your experience on social media, that could reach people that maybe you didn't even know it could reach, could help them out as well. All right, so some action items before we head into some possible Q&A, if anybody wants to do that. Just be mindful when you're put in these emotional situations, especially when you get unexpected contact or unusual requests. Make sure you do some research on these claims before you go and take action and do what they're saying. Set up as many alerts and notifications you can. I will say, if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by some of those, sometimes they're marketing emails as well. And you can go in and opt out of the marketing part of those, but still get the account alerts that you signed up for in the first place. Go ahead and review your credit report. Go to annualcreditreport.com to get those, or you can sometimes see those through different financial institutions, things like that. Run an antivirus on your devices. So not only your laptops, but your cell phones, tablets, all those good things as well. Those could be subject to some of the same issues. And then if you want to share your knowledge, you can do that and report scams to the FTC. And let's see, let me look at the chat here. I saw we had one thing. If there's any Q&A, by the way, you're welcome to put it in the chat, or I'm happy to have people come off mute too. Either way is fine. Teresa was saying that I review my transactions. I found that Mountain America was charging $7 a month to the checking account. I was told it is up to me to choose a free checking account or I'll be charged. Mac, you fix the problem and put my checking account free and reimburse the money. Yeah, so that's one thing you'll find with different institutions might have different tiers of accounts. And depending on what account you have, you might have certain thresholds that you need to meet in order to not have to pay certain fees. So a lot of banks, like big banks, will have a $25 monthly fee for an account if your account is below $3,000, average daily balance or something like that. At Mountain America, we've got our free checking, which is obviously free, and then we've got our My Style checking, which is the higher tier checking that includes some things like discounts at amusement parks and movie theaters and things like that. It includes cell phone insurance. It includes free telehealth. So it's got some other things baked into it. And it's $7 a month unless you meet, I don't know, certain criteria, number of transactions or balance or that kind of thing. But yeah, if you notice that sort of thing, it's great to go and ask, hey, why am I being charged this? And then you can get the response and make sure that you're getting the right thing and make sure that you're not being charged for something you shouldn't be charged for anyway. So yeah, that's great. And good job paying attention to that. Any questions? Anybody want to put anything out there? Or want me to go back and clarify something? All right, well, maybe not. I will remind you, I know I recognize several names on this call, people that I've done some one-on-one coaching with. We do offer that free financial coaching. There's, I think, a link that you can go and sign up for any of the people on our team for coaching, or the link on your screen is for my particular calendar if you want to sign up for me. Those are free. We try to help you out with whatever we can. And I believe you get some points for taking part in those sessions.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. Yeah, I actually met with Scott last week, so that was awesome. Yeah, good to see you again. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of information and really prevalent for today. I'm going to go ahead and put that sign in thing in the chat again. All right, make sure you sign in. Thank you everyone for your time. We'll stay on for maybe another minute. If you do have a question, we'll be looking in the chat. So thank you again. Have a great day.
Yeah, the people who have done the coaching sessions have been awesome. It's really been fun to see, hear different people's goals and scenarios and questions and all that. It's really been a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, I feel like everyone probably comes in with like a different question, so it kind of keeps you on your
Yep.
toes all the time.
Yep. And we would love to hear, some feedback in general on people's experience with that. So I don't know if you guys do a questionnaire or survey or anything about that. We would love to get those so we can make sure we're providing the value that we want to and that you want
Great.
us to.
Yeah, I'll talk with my team about that.
Cool.
All right, I guess we have no further questions. So thank you
All right.
again and have a great
Sounds
day.
good. See you later.